soft scoop, where the headlines are soft and the stories are slower, and the goal is simple, to help you relax, unwind, and maybe even drift off. Let's catch up, quietly. Lately, it feels like we've traveled back in time. Not too far back, but just enough to remember the simpler days of glittery lip gloss, flip phones, butterfly clips, and velour tracksuits. If you've been online at all recently, you've likely noticed something peculiar. People are romanticizing the early 2000s all over again. The aesthetic of that era, what many now call Y2K, has gently but steadily seeped back into fashion, music, and even how we decorate our spaces. But why now, and why are we, in 2025, finding so much comfort in the specific period of nostalgia? The early 2000s were a fascinating moment in history. Technology was evolving quickly, yet there was still a sense of mystery, of slowness. Dial-up internet forced patience. Connecting to the web felt deliberate, intentional even. We waited for our favorite web pages to load, patiently watching images fill the screen, pixel by pixel. And those sounds, the scratchy hum of a modem, the reassuring chime of an AOL login, feel comforting now, perhaps because they remind us of a simpler relationship with technology. Fashion from this period carried its own special kind of innocence. Low-rise jeans, sparkly halter tops, velour juicy couture sweatsuits. The clothing wasn't subtle, but it felt playful. It was before influencers, before carefully curated Instagram grids. You wore what felt good, what was fun, what sparkled just right. Everyone experimented whether or not it turned out to be stylish. In the last few years, that playful approach to dressing has reemerged. Celebrities and influencers like Olivia Rodrigo and Bella Hadid have embraced Y2K styles fully. Colorful sunglasses, cargo pants, platform shoes, and unlike some fashion revivals, this isn't ironic. There's genuine appreciation, genuine joy in rediscovering that particular sparkly way of dressing. But fashion is just the start. It's not just clothes and accessories we're romanticizing, it's the early internet experience itself. Platforms like MySpace and Tumblr once shaped an entire generation. These sites allowed us to experiment with identity in ways that felt entirely new. On MySpace, you could choose your top 8, customize your background, add your favorite songs, and present yourself in a way that felt personal, messy, and imperfect, but yours. Now, as social media feels increasingly overwhelming, algorithm-driven, and hyper-curated, there's a yearning for the rawness of those early platforms. Recently, younger generations have rediscovered Tumblr, and even MySpace-style profile aesthetics have reemerged on newer platforms. There's comfort in a space where not everything is filtered, smoothed over, or perfectly branded, just like the early 2000s themselves. Then, there's the unique soundscape of the 2000s. Pop songs by Britney Spears, Destiny's Child, NSYNC, or Avril Lavigne weren't just background music, they were formative. And today, these artists are still beloved not just by those who grew up with them, but by Gen Z listeners who discovered them later. Playlists filled with 2000s pop, R&B, and even emo bands are trending again, gently filling headphones and speakers with nostalgia. It's familiar, comforting, and perfectly suited to a world searching for something softer, lighter, and simpler. Even the aesthetic of the tech itself, chunky computers, translucent electronics, glittery flip phones, has found its way into design and art today. That early digital look, now called Frutiger Aero, was shiny, optimistic, and almost childlike. And perhaps that's the point. We're reaching back for the innocence and optimism these aesthetics symbolized. The future felt open-ended, exciting, but safe, something we now crave in uncertain times. It might also be about control. When technology moves so quickly, nostalgia lets us pause. To deliberately embrace the early 2000s is to slow down, to decide what we value in our digital lives. Nostalgia is more than a longing. It's a quiet rebellion, a statement that says maybe, just maybe, we miss when life online was less intense, less performative. Then there's the gentle comfort factor. For millennials, these memories hold nostalgia. But for Gen Z, too young to fully remember the 2000s clearly, there's something comforting about adopting an aesthetic so rooted in optimism. In a post-pandemic world, after years of global uncertainty, looking backwards can feel soothing. It offers the emotional equivalent of warm, familiar blankets or comfort foods, something soft to hold on to in a world that can feel sharp around the edges. And in that sense, this revival isn't merely superficial. It speaks to a deeper human impulse. We're reminding ourselves that joy, playfulness, and even silliness have value. The Y2K revival doesn't take itself too seriously, and perhaps that's exactly why it resonates so deeply. It reminds us to smile, to relax, and to embrace imperfection once again. It's worth noting, too, that nostalgia cycles usually run on roughly 20-year increments. In the 70s, we romanticized the 50s. In the 90s, we romanticized the 70s. Now, here we are in the mid-2020s, gently unpacking the glitter and gauzy aesthetic of the early aughts. It's not just fashion or music, it's our way of processing history, emotions, and identity. Of course, the early 2000s had problems. Every era does. But nostalgia has a way of polishing memories until they shine. It's less about accurate historical recall and more about emotional resonance, about how we felt, how we want to feel again. The softness of selective memory might gloss over some harsher truths, but it does so gently, lovingly. Because nostalgia isn't about perfect recall, it's about comfort. And so, we keep returning. The Y2K aesthetic revival is more than a passing trend. It's a cultural moment, a collective emotional release. It's our way of processing where we've been, where we are, and where we might want to go next. It's proof that sometimes the past holds the key to the future, gently reminding us of who we once were and who we can still be. But it's not only comfort that drives this revival, it's also the desire for agency. During the early 2000s, media consumption still felt personal and exploratory. You downloaded music from LimeWire or burned CDs. You searched fan-made forums. You edited your photos on rudimentary apps without worrying about engagement metrics. Today's social internet can feel transactional, even competitive. By adopting the aesthetics and habits of a more analog era, people are quietly reclaiming a sense of self-directed joy outside the pressure to perform or monetize their personalities. The resurgence of DIY culture plays a role too. In the early 2000s, scrapbooking, collage art, and mix CDs were physical expressions of taste. Now, with the return of mood boards, journaling, and handmade accessories, that tactile creativity has returned in digital form through Pinterest boards, Instagram dump posts, and maximalist edits. It's no surprise that platforms like TikTok have embraced this lo-fi style, with users posting soft, sparkly videos that mimic the camcorder look or Windows Movie Maker transitions. The line between past and present is blurred in the best way. Culturally, the early 2000s were also one of the last eras before mass digital surveillance, before algorithms started tailoring our every online experience. There's a kind of collective memory of freedom to be weird online, to try on identities, to make mistakes without a permanent record. In reviving the aesthetics of that time, younger generations are also reviving the spirit of experimentation, with fewer consequences and a bit more joy. From a socio-political perspective, this trend might also reflect exhaustion. The past few years have been heavy. A global pandemic, political division, economic instability, climate anxiety. The early 2000s, while certainly not perfect, are remembered as a time of relative optimism, a moment before the financial crash, before smartphones, before 24/7 breaking news cycles. Revisiting that era through style, music, and media becomes a soft form of escape, one that feels more innocent than denial, but still deeply intentional. There's also a growing awareness that the internet of the early 2000s felt more decentralized, more human. Before algorithms and influencers, before curated feeds, there were forums, fan pages, and homegrown web design. And while some of it was messy, even cringeworthy, it was real. The return of Y2K isn't just a style, it's a quiet protest against digital homogeneity. It's a desire for something imperfect, unpredictable, and personal. As the revival deepens, it's also intersecting with a wave of media reboots and archival content reappreciation. Iconic shows like Gilmore Girls, The OC, and One Tree Hill have found new life on streaming platforms, gaining entirely new audiences. What was once considered cheesy or overly sentimental is now viewed with affection. Younger viewers are watching these shows not for irony, but for comfort. The drama is lower stakes, the fashion is fun, and the dialogue, while occasionally cringy, feels sincere in a way that modern scripted content sometimes doesn't. There's also a technological nostalgia tied to formats themselves. Physical media like DVDs, CDs, even digital cameras have seen small resurgences. Young people are buying secondhand camcorders or disposable cameras, not just for the aesthetic, but because of how it changes the experience. You take fewer photos, but each one matters more. There's a delay between capturing and seeing. In a world where everything is instant, the slow return of analog tech offers a refreshing sense of patience. And maybe this is part of it too. Patience. The early 2000s were a slower time. It took 10 minutes to burn a CD. You had to wait to get your film developed. You checked your email once a day, maybe. The pace of life wasn't necessarily better, but it was more deliberate. And now, as we live in a time of speed and saturation, the Y2K revival is reminding us of how meaningful slowness can be. Next time you see someone wearing butterfly clips or flip phones making a quiet comeback, don't dismiss it. Look closer. You'll see joy, optimism, and hope in every sparkle, every rhinestone, every smile. Because sometimes, looking back is exactly what we need to do to move forward softly. What also makes this revival feel different is how it's being reinterpreted through a modern lens. Today's Y2K aesthetic isn't a perfect replica. It's more inclusive, more self-aware. Body types, skin tones, and gender expressions that were underrepresented in the mainstream. 2000s media are now part of the aesthetics reinvention. People are reclaiming and remixing the look in ways that speak to now, not just then. There's a softness in that too, the permission to revisit the past without repeating its blind spots. Then there's the role of nostalgia in forming identity. For many, the early 2000s represent a point of origin, where identity began to take shape through the media we consumed, the clothes we wore, the music we downloaded. Revisiting those elements allows people to reflect, reset, and even reparent parts of themselves. It's not just play, it's processing. In an era increasingly interested in self-work and reflection, Y2K nostalgia acts like a low-stakes, high-reward mirror. Interestingly, brands have picked up on this. Companies like Bratz, Juicy Couture, and even Motorola have leaned into their 2000s roots, not just in products, but in tone. Campaigns mimic the visual language of old magazines, lo-fi ads, and cheesy product placements from early MTV. But the difference is that today's audience is in on the joke. They know it's campy, they know it's nostalgic, and they love it anyway. The irony isn't a wall, it's a wink. Even in the beauty world, early 2000s trends are thriving. Frosted lip gloss, skinny brows, heavy eyeliner, glitter everywhere. And while not everyone is eager to resurrect every look, the fun is in the experimentation. The idea that beauty doesn't have to be polished, minimalist, or even symmetrical is a relief to many. It's freeing, it's joyful, and it fits into a broader movement of rejecting rigidity in favor of creative freedom. In education and cultural analysis, scholars are even beginning to treat Y2K as a serious field of study. Cultural critics are re-evaluating the media of the era, examining its values, gender roles, consumerism, and representations of race and class. These conversations help contextualize our nostalgic impulses. They ask not just why we're looking back, but what we're taking with us when we do. That awareness enriches the experience. We're not just mimicking the past, we're understanding it. And maybe most surprisingly, this revival has remained relatively gentle. It hasn't turned aggressive or divisive like so many trends today. It's not trying to convince anyone, it's just there, sparkling in the corner of the internet, humming quietly in playlists, slipping into wardrobes one butterfly clip at a time. And for something that's so easy to dismiss as surface level, it's proven to be deeply enduring. That's it for tonight's episode of The Soft Scoop. Whether the early 2000s hold a special place in your memory or you're discovering them now, we hope this slow journey back was soothing, comforting, and just a little sparkly. Rated 3 yawns out of 5 because nostalgia is gently energizing but also calming enough to dream too.